"Savage," Victor Slade sneered, his voice cutting through the smoky air as he stormed the stage, pointing at Aiyana mid-song. Her Sioux melody faltered, the crowd's laughter burning her ears, and when Slade shoved her drunken brother Kele to the ground, Aiyana's rage flared. She hurled a wooden prop, grazing Slade's shoulder, sparking chaos as shouts of "Arrest her!" erupted, leaving her torn between saving Kele and defending her sacred heritage. Aiyana, a 26-year-old Sioux singer, carries the weight of her tribe's traditions in her voice, weaving sacred songs under South Dakota's vast skies in 1910. Trapped between protecting these rituals from the greedy hands of white showmen and earning money to pull her 20-year-old brother Kele from the grip of alcoholism, she aches with every step. Shunned as a savage by white townsfolk and distrusted by her tribe for performing their songs for outsiders, Aiyana hides a forbidden love for Henry, a white musician, her heart torn between passion and her duty to her people's legacy. Aiyana stood in the dim light of her tent, her fingers trembling as she adjusted the beaded fringes of her ceremonial dress. The air smelled of sage and dust, and her heart pounded with worry for Kele, her brother, who slumped in a corner, his eyes glazed from whiskey. She glanced at him, his promise not to drink tonight already broken, and her stomach twisted. Outside, the hum of the South Dakota fair grew louder, white townsfolk gathering for her performance. Aiyana whispered a prayer to her ancestors, begging for strength to sing their sacred Sioux song without shame. Henry, the kind-eyed musician, slipped in, his touch on her shoulder warm but fleeting, whispering, "You'll shine tonight." A Sioux elder in the crowd caught her eye through the tent flap, his gaze sharp with doubt, as if she were betraying their ways. Aiyana took a deep breath, her throat tight, and stepped toward the stage, the weight of Kele's future and her tribe's legacy pressing on her chest. She had to sing, not for fame, but for the money to save her brother, even if it meant facing a crowd that saw her as less than human. Under the flickering lanterns, Aiyana's voice rose, clear and haunting, weaving the Sioux song through the night air. The crowd hushed, captivated, but Victor Slade lurked at the stage's edge, his lips curled in a mocking sneer. Halfway through, he stormed forward, bellowing, "Enough of this howling!" The crowd erupted in laughter, their jeers slicing into Aiyana's heart, her hands shaking as she faltered. Slade demanded she sing his civilized version, a mockery of her heritage, and her eyes burned with unshed tears. Kele, swaying drunkenly below the stage, shouted a slurred protest, drawing Slade's scorn. "Quiet, you filthy drunk," Slade snapped, his voice dripping venom. Aiyana's chest tightened, her song dying in her throat as she saw Kele's face crumple, the crowd's laughter now aimed at him. She clenched her fists, torn between continuing to appease the audience for Kele's medicine money and screaming back at Slade's cruelty. The stage felt like a trap, her sacred melody twisted into a spectacle for those who despised her people. Rage boiled in Aiyana as Slade shoved Kele, sending him sprawling into the dirt below the stage. "Get up, you wretch!" Slade barked, but Aiyana's voice broke free, yelling, "Leave him alone!" Her heart thundered, the crowd's gasps fading as she grabbed a wooden prop, a carved eagle, and hurled it at Slade. It struck his shoulder, and he staggered, clutching the spot with a howl of pain. Reese, Slade's brutish lackey, lunged toward her, but Aiyana dodged, her breath ragged. The crowd roared, some shouting, "She attacked him!" while others jeered, egging on the chaos. Henry darted forward, pulling Aiyana back, his eyes wide with fear. "Run!" he hissed, but her feet felt rooted. Her gaze locked on Kele, who struggled to stand, his face smeared with dirt. The weight of her action crashed over her. She'd fought back, but at what cost? Slade's furious glare promised retribution, and Aiyana's stomach churned, knowing she'd just turned their fragile world upside down. Slade rose, his face red with fury, pointing at Aiyana as he shouted, "You'll pay for that, savage!" A fair worker rushed off, muttering about fetching the sheriff, and Aiyana's heart sank, the word truant echoing in her mind. Reese seized Kele's arm, twisting it until he yelped, snarling, "Move, or I'll break it!" Henry pleaded with Slade. "She didn't mean it. Let's talk." But Slade laughed, a cold, cruel sound that chilled Aiyana's bones. Her knees weakened, guilt flooding her for dragging Kele and Henry into this mess. She slipped into the shadows behind the stage, her breath hitching as she fought tears, the crowd shouts of, "Lock her up," ringing in her ears. A Sioux woman watched from afar, her expression unreadable, and Aiyana felt the sting of her tribe's judgment. She clutched her beaded necklace, a gift from her mother, whispering, "What have I done?" The fair's lights blurred through her tears, and she knew she was now a fugitive, her dreams of saving Kele slipping away like sand. Henry found Aiyana crouched behind a stack of crates, her face buried in her hands, sobs shaking her shoulders. "Aiyana, look at me," he said softly, kneeling beside her, his voice a lifeline in the dark. She wiped her eyes, whispering, "I've ruined everything." Henry shook his head, admitting he despised Slade but needed the troops' pay, his honesty soothing her raw nerves. Reese's shadow loomed nearby, his growl cutting through. "Stay out of this, boy, or you're next." Aiyana's heart raced, guilt surging for endangering Henry, but his hand found hers, steady and warm. "We'll fix this together," he promised, his blue eyes fierce with resolve. She nodded, her fear easing, but the weight of her tribe's distrust and Kele's suffering pressed harder. A rustling nearby made them freeze, but it was only a stray cat, and Aiyana exhaled, clinging to Henry's words as her only hope in the spiraling nightmare. Aiyana sat by Kele in their tent, his trembling hands clutching a tin cup, the stench of whiskey on his breath. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, his voice thick with shame, and her heart ached, seeing the boy he used to be. She weighed her choices. Sing Slade's vile song to earn medicine money or flee to protect her Sioux heritage. Each path a betrayal. Memories of her grandmother's teachings, the sacredness of their songs, tightened her throat. She touched an old family photo, her parents' faces faded but stern, urging her to fight for their legacy. Henry slipped in, his face pale, urging, "You could run, Aiyana, start over." But she shook her head, tears welling. "I can't leave Kele." Her brother's shallow breathing filled the silence, and Aiyana's resolve hardened. She'd face Slade's wrath, but on her terms, for Kele and the songs that defined her soul. Kele stirred at dawn, his eyes clearer, and he grabbed Aiyana's hand, whispering, "I messed up, sister." He spoke of the boarding school, the beatings that drove him to drink, and Aiyana's chest tightened, tears spilling as she listened. "I'll quit, I swear," he said, his voice breaking, and she nodded, stroking his hair, desperate to believe him. She gave him water, her hands steady despite the fear gnawing at her. When she mentioned Slade's insult, Kele's fists clenched, his anger mirroring hers. "We'll make him pay," he vowed, and Aiyana felt a spark of hope, their bond rekindling. She hugged him, whispering, "We're stronger together." The tent's canvas flapped in the morning breeze, and Aiyana prayed this moment of clarity would last, knowing every step forward was a battle against Kele's demons and her own. Aiyana trudged to the Sioux encampment, her heart heavy as she sought Taza, the elder whose wisdom she craved. She found him by a fire, his face stern, and knelt, saying, "I need your guidance." Taza's eyes narrowed, his voice cold. "You shame us, singing our songs for white men." Aiyana's throat burned as she explained her need to save Kele, but Taza shook his head, unmoved. "You've sold our spirit," he said, turning away. and her hope crumbled, the rejection cutting deep. A young Sioux man nearby watched, his pitying glance stinging more than Taza's words. She stood, her legs shaky, feeling like an outsider in her own tribe. As she walked back, the prairie wind whispered her grandmother's songs, and Aiyana vowed to prove Taza wrong, even if it meant fighting alone. Under moonlight, Aiyana crept to Henry's tent, her heart racing as she tapped the canvas. He pulled her inside, his face etched with worry, whispering, "Slade's furious. He's watching me." They sat close, sharing dreams of a world where their love wasn't forbidden, and Aiyana's tears fell, the tribe's rejection raw. Henry wiped her cheek, his touch gentle, saying, "You're not alone." Her fear of discovery spiked, but his warmth anchored her, and she confessed her pain at Taza's words. "We'll find a way," Henry promised, his voice steady, and she clung to him, their hands entwined. A twig snapped outside, and they froze, hearts pounding, but it was only the wind. Aiyana left, her resolve strengthened by Henry's faith, yet the shadow of their impossible love loomed large. Slade's summons came at noon, his office reeking of cigar smoke as Aiyana stood before him, her stomach churning. "Sing my song tomorrow night, or I call the sheriff," he growled, tossing her a crumpled sheet of lyrics, each word a mockery of her people. Reese smirked in the corner, his knuckles bruised, a silent threat. Aiyana's voice shook as she argued, "This insults my tribe," but Slade's laughter silenced her. "You're nothing but a show pony," he spat, and her cheeks burned with shame. She gripped the paper, her fingers trembling, knowing refusal meant arrest. Reese stepped closer, his breath hot, and Aiyana backed away, her heart pounding. She fled the office, the vile lyrics clutched in her hand, torn between saving Kele and spitting in Slade's face, her spirit raging against his cruelty. Aiyana's heart raced as she lingered near the fair's edge, her eyes catching Reese hauling a strange wooden box into Slade's tent. The box gleamed with metal edges, unlike anything she'd seen, and her curiosity flared, sensing it held secrets. She crept closer, hiding behind a barrel, and overheard Reese mutter about recordings and big money. Her stomach churned, the word recordings echoing in her mind, tied to her sacred songs. A fairgoer's laugh startled her, and she pressed herself against the barrel, her breath shallow. The Sioux elders' warning about betraying their ways gnawed at her, but she shook it off, driven by a need to know Slade's game. She memorized the tent's location, her fingers clutching her beaded necklace for courage. As Reese left, Aiyana slipped away, her mind buzzing with suspicion, certain this box was the key to exposing Slade's cruelty and saving her brother's future. A crumpled note slipped under Aiyana's tent flap at dusk, its scrawled words chilling her. "Slade steals your soul's song." "Find the machine." She froze, scanning the shadows, and glimpsed a figure in a feathered cloak vanishing into the crowd. Her pulse quickened. The name, People's Singer, whispered in tribal tales, a ghost who guarded their heritage. She tucked the note into her sleeve, fear and hope warring in her chest. Kele stirred, groaning from his drunken sleep, and her heart ached, the note's warning fueling her resolve. She hesitated, wondering if this was a trap, but the elder's cold rejection pushed her forward. Aiyana kissed Kele's forehead, whispering, "I'll fix this," and stepped into the night, the note's words burning in her mind, urging her to uncover Slade's hidden truth. Moonlight bathed the fairgrounds as Aiyana crept toward Slade's tent, her small knife tucked in her belt, its cold steel steadying her nerves. Henry's warning about the danger rang in her ears, but she hushed him in her mind, her duty to her people stronger. She slipped past a snoring guard, her heart pounding as she pried open the tent flap. Inside, The air was thick with cigar smoke, and her eyes locked on the wooden box, now open, revealing a phonograph. Her breath caught, the machine's purpose dawning. It stole her songs. She rifled through papers, finding a contract naming Carter a music tycoon, and her hands shook with fury. A creak outside made her duck, her pulse racing, but it was just the wind. Aiyana vowed to return, her fear swallowed by a fierce determination to stop Slade's theft. Inside Slade's tent, Aiyana's fingers traced the phonograph's cold metal, her heart sinking as she found wax cylinders labeled Sioux Chants. A contract beside it promised Carter thousands for her tribe's sacred songs. And her blood boiled, betrayal cutting deep. She snatched a cylinder, her hands trembling, and skimmed a ledger listing native performers, their names marked with cruel notes. Footsteps crunched outside, and she dove behind a crate, her heart hammering as Reese's shadow loomed. He muttered about cleaning up, and Aiyana's throat tightened, realizing they'd exploit her people endlessly. She scribbled a contract clause on a scrap, tucking it with the cylinder. As Reese left, she fled, the weight of her discovery crushing her, yet fueling a fire to expose Slade's greed and protect her heritage. Aiyana's escape faltered as Reese's boots thudded closer, his lantern swinging wildly. She dove under a wagon, her elbows scraping dirt, and stifled a gasp as her bangle clinked, falling into the dust. Reese paused, his growl chilling her. "Who's there?" Her chest burned, breath held as he scanned the shadows, inches from her hiding spot. The bangle glinted, a beacon of her presence, and her heart sank, fearing it would betray her. A cat's yowl distracted Reese, and he cursed, stomping off. Aiyana grabbed the bangle, her hands shaking, and ran to the forest's edge, clutching the cylinder. Tears stung her eyes, the close call shaking her, but the stolen evidence in her grip hardened her resolve to fight, no matter the cost to her or Kele. Aiyana found Henry by the river, his face pale under the stars, and poured out her discovery. The phonograph, Carter's contract, the theft of her people's soul. Henry's eyes widened, his voice low. "We can't let them win." She showed him the cylinder, its wax heavy with her tribe's songs, and his hand gripped hers, steadying her trembling fingers. They planned to find a journalist, but Aiyana's fear spiked, the lost bangle haunting her thoughts. "What if Reese finds it?" she whispered, and Henry's jaw tightened, promising to watch for trouble. A frog's croak broke the silence, and they laughed nervously, their bond a flicker of light in her dark world. Aiyana hid the cylinder under a rock, her heart racing with hope and dread, knowing their fight had just begun. Dawn broke, and Aiyana returned to find Kele curled in the tent, a fresh bottle by his side. Her heart shattered, his slurred sorry barely audible as he shook from withdrawal. She knelt, wiping his brow, tears falling as she begged, "You have to fight, Kele." She told him of Slade's machine, her voice fierce, hoping to spark his will. Kele's eyes flickered, a faint nod his only reply, and she clung to it, desperate for his strength. She gave him broth, her hands gentle, but the bottle's stench mocked her efforts. A neighbor's shout about the sheriff's patrol made her flinch, and Aiyana hid Kele's bottle, her resolve wavering. She kissed his cheek, whispering, "I need you," her love for him a painful anchor in her storm. Aiyana rode to the Sioux camp, her horse's hooves kicking dust as she sought Taza again, desperation driving her. She found him weaving a basket, his face like stone, and pleaded, "Slade's stealing our songs." Taza scoffed. "You brought this shame, girl," his words a knife to her heart. She showed him the contract scrap, her voice breaking, but he tossed it into the fire, unmoved. A young Sioux woman watched, her eyes soft with pity, and Aiyana's cheeks burned, feeling utterly alone. She stumbled away, the camp's silence deafening, her tears mixing with the dust. The prairie stretched wide, whispering her ancestors' songs, and Aiyana swore to fight for them, even if her tribe turned its back. Aiyana met Henry at dusk, his face bruised from a scuffle, and gasped, "What happened?" He admitted Reese had cornered him, warning, "Keep your savage girl in line." Her guilt surged, but Henry's defiance, "I'm with you," warmed her heart. They sat under an oak, dreaming of a life free from hate, and Aiyana's tears fell, Taza's rejection raw. Henry's fingers brushed her cheek, his voice soft, "We'll prove them wrong." A rustling made them jump, but it was only a deer, and they laughed, tension easing. She confessed her fear of failing Kele, and Henry's embrace steadied her. Aiyana left, her heart lighter, Henry's courage fueling her to face the growing storm of Slade's wrath. Aiyana's blood froze as Reese's hand clamped her arm in the forest, his snarl echoing, "Got you, thief!" She twisted free, sprinting through the trees, branches clawing her skin. Reese's boots pounded behind, his shouts of, "Stop, or you're dead," spiking her panic. The people's singer appeared, his cloak a shadow, and yanked her into a ditch, his hand silencing her gasp. Reese stormed past, cursing, and the singer whispered, "Carter's the puppet master," slipping her a note before vanishing. Aiyana's chest heaved, the close call shaking her, but the note's weight in her hand steeled her. She stumbled to safety, her heart pounding with fear and gratitude, ready to unravel Carter's role in Slade's cruel game. Aiyana sat alone in her tent, the people's singer's notes spread before her, their cryptic warnings clawing at her mind. She traced the words, "Soul Song," and Carter, her heart heavy with suspicion, recalling tribal tales of a Sioux guardian. Kele's empty cot mocked her, his absence a fresh wound, and she clutched the wax cylinder, its weight grounding her. Was the singer a savior or a trickster? Her doubt gnawed, but Taza's rejection left her no one else to trust. She slipped the notes into her dress, her fingers brushing the beaded necklace her mother gave her, its familiar touch soothing her fear. Henry's warning about Slade's spies echoed, and she peeked outside, the fair's lanterns casting eerie shadows. Aiyana whispered a prayer to her ancestors, her resolve hardening. She'd follow the singer's clues, risking everything to save her people's songs and Kele's soul. Aiyana stepped onto the fair stage, her throat tight as she faced the jeering crowd, Slade's twisted lyrics in her hand. She began the civilized song, each word a betrayal, her voice cracking under the weight of shame. Slade smirked from the sidelines, his eyes gleaming with triumph, while her heart sank, the sacred Sioux melody buried. The crowd clapped, their cheers hollow, and Aiyana's cheeks burned, feeling her ancestors' disapproval. Kele watched from below, his eyes dull, and she sang for him, hating every note. A Sioux child in the audience stared, her gaze piercing, and Aiyana faltered, guilt choking her. She finished, fleeing to the wings, tears streaming as she vowed never to sing Slade's lies again, her spirit crushed but defiant. The crowd's laughter followed Aiyana backstage, a group of white men shouting, "Sing it again, wild girl!" She clenched her fists, their mockery cutting deeper than Slade's insults, her pride in tatters. Henry found her, his touch gentle, whispering, "You're stronger than them." She shook her head, sobbing, "I betrayed my people." The Sioux child's face haunted her, a mirror of her own lost innocence. A fair worker sneered, "Back to your cage, savage," and Aiyana's rage flared, her hands trembling. Henry pulled her away, his voice firm. "We'll fight back." She nodded, wiping her tears, the cylinder hidden in her dress a reminder of her mission. Aiyana's heart steadied, her humiliation fueling a fierce resolve to expose Slade and reclaim her voice. Henry slipped into a smoky tavern, his heart pounding as he approached a journalist, a wiry man with sharp eyes. "Slade's stealing native songs," he said, voice low. But the man demanded proof, his pen tapping impatiently. Henry described the phonograph. His words rushed, knowing Slade's men roamed nearby. A barmaid's laugh made him flinch, and he tucked the journalist's card into his boot, fear prickling his skin. Risa's hulking figure appeared at the door, and Henry ducked behind a table, his breath shallow. He escaped through a back alley, the journalist's promise to investigate echoing in his mind. Henry ran to Aiyana, his hope fragile but burning, determined to deliver her evidence and end Slade's greed. Aiyana crept back to Slade's tent at midnight, her pulse racing as she dodged patrolling guards. The phonograph sat unguarded, and she rifled through papers, finding a list of native artists, their names scrawled with slurs. A letter from Carter promised more machines, and her stomach twisted, the scale of their theft dawning. She copied names in the dark, her hands steady despite her fear. A guard's cough made her freeze, her heart in her throat, but he passed by. Aiyana tucked the list into her sleeve, her anger surging at the thought of her people's exploitation. She slipped out, the night air cold, her mission clear. Every stolen name deserved justice, and she'd fight for them all. Reese's shout shattered the night as he spotted Aiyana fleeing Slade's tent, his boots thundering across the fairgrounds. She sprinted, heart hammering, dodging crates as lanterns swung wildly in the dark. "You're mine," Reese roared, his voice a blade, and Aiyana's legs burned, fear driving her forward. She tripped, scraping her knee, the list slipping but caught in her grip. Reese's hand grazed her sleeve, and she screamed, twisting free. A horse cart blocked her path, and she dove beneath it, dirt stinging her eyes. Reese's curses faded as he searched the wrong way, and Aiyana crawled out, gasping, her body shaking but her resolve unbroken. The list clutched like a lifeline. The people's singer emerged from the shadows, his cloak blending with the night, and pulled Aiyana behind a tree as Reese's lantern swept past. He pressed a finger to his lips, his eyes fierce, and whispered, "Carter's the head of this snake." Aiyana's breath hitched, the list burning in her hand, and he slipped her a note pointing to Carter's warehouse. Reese's shout echoed nearby, and the singer shoved her toward a ditch, his strength startling. She hid, her chest heaving, as Reese stormed off, oblivious. The singer vanished, leaving Aiyana trembling, the note's weight urging her on. She clutched her necklace, gratitude and fear mixing, ready to hunt Carter's secrets despite the danger. Aiyana found Kele in their tent, his eyes bloodshot, his voice raw as he muttered, "I'm no good, sister." She knelt, heartbreaking, and told him of Slade's machine, her words fierce to ignite his spirit. "They're stealing our songs," she said, and Kele's jaw tightened, a spark of anger flaring. She held his hand, begging, "Fight with me," and he nodded, tears falling. Aiyana gave him water, her touch gentle, but the tense silence screamed of his struggle. She hid the list under the cot, fear of Reese's pursuit lingering. Kele's weak grip on her hand gave her hope, and she swore to save him, her love a flame against the darkness. Henry staggered into the tent, his face swollen, blood trickling from his lip, and Aiyana gasped, "Reese did this!" He nodded, voice hoarse. He said, "You're next." Her guilt surged, tears welling, but Henry grabbed her shoulders. "We're not quitting." She cleaned his wounds, her hands shaking, each bruise a reminder of her burden. Henry described Reese's threat, his voice steady despite the pain, and Aiyana's fear grew, picturing Kele's fate. They planned to hide the cylinder, their whispers urgent, and Aiyana's heart ached, Henry's loyalty, her anchor. A dog's bark outside made them freeze, but it passed, and she hugged Henry, her resolve steeled by his sacrifice, ready to face Slade's wrath. Aiyana tended Henry in the dim tent, her fingers gentle as she bandaged his cuts, her heart heavy with guilt. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but Henry smiled. "I'd do it again for you." She told him of the singer's note, her voice low, and they planned to find Carter's warehouse, hope flickering. The cylinder's weight pressed against her, a silent vow to her ancestors. Henry's hand found hers, his warmth easing her fear, and they dreamed of a future free from Slade's shadow. Aiyana's thoughts drifted to Kele, her worry sharp, and she prayed he'd stay strong. Footsteps outside faded, and she exhaled, her bond with Henry alight in the storm, pushing her to fight for her people's songs. Aiyana's heart sank as she heard hooves thundering toward the Sioux camp, Barlow's voice barking orders to his men. She hid behind a tree, watching as they dragged Taza from his tent, his wrists bound, accused of stirring rebellion. A young Sioux boy ran to her, whispering, "They're taking him to town." Her stomach twisted, guilt flooding her for bringing trouble to Taza. Barlow's cold eyes scanned the camp, and Aiyana ducked lower, her breath shallow, fearing discovery. She clutched the wax cylinder, its weight a reminder of her fight, and vowed to free Taza. A woman's wail echoed, mourning Taza's capture, and Aiyana's tears fell, her resolve hardening. She slipped away, the camp's fires fading behind her, determined to save Taza and stop Barlow's lies. Under a moonless sky, Aiyana gathered the Sioux in a hidden grove, her voice trembling as she spoke of Slade's phonograph and Carter's greed. Young warriors nodded, their eyes fierce, but elders shook their heads, muttering, "You've shamed us." She sang a sacred song, its notes stirring hearts, and a few elders softened, their gazes less harsh. Aiyana held up the contract scrap, pleading, "We must fight together." A woman offered to spread word to other tribes, and hope flickered in Aiyana's chest. Taza's absence weighed heavy, and she fought tears, urging unity. A rustling made them tense, but it was only wind, and Aiyana pressed on, her spirit lifted by the growing support. The grove's silence broke as elders argued, their voices sharp, accusing Aiyana of tainting their songs. "You danced for white men," one spat, and her cheeks burned, shame choking her. Younger Sioux defended her, shouting, "She's fighting for us," and the air crackled with tension. Aiyana raised her hands, begging, "Listen, they're stealing our soul." She showed the cylinder, its wax gleaming, and a few nodded, swayed by her proof. An elder suggested waiting for Taza, but Aiyana's heart sank, time slipping away. A child's cry pierced the night, and she knelt, comforting her, her resolve unshaken. Aiyana left the grove, her heart torn, praying the tribe would unite before Barlow crushed them. Aiyana froze as Mrs. Slade emerged from the shadows near her tent, her face pale, whispering, "I know what Victor's doing." Aiyana's pulse raced, wary, but Mrs. Slade slipped her a ledger page listing Carter's payments, her hands trembling. "I'm scared," she admitted, and Aiyana's suspicion softened, seeing her fear. The ledger burned in her hand, proof of Slade's empire, and she tucked it away, heart pounding. Mrs. Slade begged, "Don't tell him it was me," and Aiyana nodded, torn by pity and distrust. A dog barked, and Mrs. Slade fled, leaving Aiyana stunned. She clutched her necklace, the unexpected ally igniting hope, but doubt lingered, urging caution in her fight. Aiyana and Henry huddled in the tent, wrapping the cylinder and ledger in cloth, their whispers urgent. Henry wrote a note to the journalist, his pen scratching fast, detailing Slade's theft. Aiyana's hands shook, fearing the package might be intercepted, but Henry's calm voice steadied her. "It'll reach him." They entrusted it to a trusted fair worker, her heart racing as he vanished into the dawn. Aiyana prayed to her ancestors, the cylinder's absence, a weight lifted yet a risk taken. Henry squeezed her hand, his eyes fierce, and she leaned into him, hope fragile but growing. A shout from the fair made them flinch, and Aiyana braced herself, ready for Slade's retaliation. Barlow's men stormed the grove at dawn, rifles cracking the air, scattering the Sioux in panic. Aiyana dove behind a rock, her heart pounding as Taza struggled, blood trickling from his brow. "Disperse or die!" Barlow shouted, his voice cold, and Aiyana's rage flared, her fists clenched. She pulled a young girl to safety, her small hand trembling, and whispered, "Stay low." Taza's defiant glare met hers, and she choked back tears, guilt searing her. A man's scream echoed as Barlow's men struck, and Aiyana crawled away, her body shaking. She hid in the brush, the chaos fading, her resolve burning to save Taza and end Barlow's terror. The people's singer appeared as Aiyana fled, his cloak a shadow, guiding her through the forest to a hidden path. "Follow me," he whispered, his voice urgent, and she trusted him, her legs aching. He led her to a cave, its walls damp, and pointed to a crate, saying, "Carter's secrets." Aiyana's heart leaped, hope surging, but his eyes warned of danger. She thanked him, her voice soft, and he vanished, leaving a note about a warehouse. A twig snapped outside, and she froze, fear spiking, but it was only a deer. Aiyana gripped the note, her gratitude for the singer fueling her, ready to uncover Carter's lair. Aiyana entered the warehouse, its air thick with dust, and found stacks of wax cylinders labeled with tribal names. Her heart sank, each one a stolen song, and she clutched a ledger detailing Carter's profits, her anger boiling. Letters from Slade bragged of taming savages, and Aiyana's hands shook, betrayal cutting deep. She stuffed papers into her dress, her breath ragged, determined to expose them. A guard's whistle sounded, and she hid behind a crate, her pulse racing. The warehouse's shadows loomed, and she slipped out, her evidence heavy. Aiyana ran, the night swallowing her, her mission clear despite the danger lurking. Flames roared as Carter's men torched the warehouse, the sky glowing red as Aiyana watched from a hill, her heart breaking. She clutched the few papers she'd saved, tears streaming as the cylinders burned, her people's songs lost. A guard laughed, shouting, "No proof now!" And Aiyana's rage surged, her fists clenched. She tried to run closer, choking on smoke, but the heat drove her back. The singer's note crinkled in her hand, and she sobbed, feeling defeated. Aiyana checked her papers, finding a contract intact, and her resolve flickered, refusing to surrender. She stumbled away, the fire's glow haunting her, vowing to fight with what remained. Kele found Aiyana at dawn, his face gaunt but eyes clear, and hugged her, whispering, "I'm here, sister." Her heart lifted, tears falling as she saw his effort to stay sober. She told him of the warehouse fire, her voice raw, and Kele's fists clenched. "We'll stop them." He offered to guard their tent, his strength a fragile gift, and Aiyana nodded, hope stirring. She gave him bread, her touch gentle, praying he'd hold on. A sheriff's whistle echoed, and she hid the papers, fear spiking. Kele's determined nod warmed her, and Aiyana embraced him, their bond a spark against the darkness, pushing her to keep fighting. Aiyana entrusted the remaining papers to Henry, her hands trembling as she handed him the crumpled contract. He rode to a dusty inn, his heart pounding, and met a federal agent, a stern man with a scarred face. "Carter and Slade are done if this holds," the agent said, scanning the papers, and Henry's hopes surged. Aiyana waited in the tent, her stomach knotted, fearing the agent might be corrupt. She wrote an anonymous letter accusing Barlow, her pen shaking with urgency. Henry returned, whispering, "He's trustworthy," and Aiyana exhaled, clutching her necklace for strength. A sheriff's shout echoed outside, and she hid the letter, her pulse racing. Aiyana prayed to her ancestors, her resolve burning to see justice, even as fear of betrayal lingered. Henry stood before the Sioux camp, his voice steady, declaring, "I love Aiyana, and I fight for her cause." Elders scoffed, calling him an outsider, their words sharp. But Aiyana's heart swelled, tears brimming. She stepped forward, defending him. "He risks his life for us," her voice fierce. A young warrior clapped, his support sparking others, and the camp's mood shifted. Henry grasped her hand, defying glares, and Aiyana felt invincible, their bond a shield. An elder's frown lingered, but she ignored it, her love for Henry fueling her courage. A coyote howled nearby, and Aiyana smiled, feeling her ancestors' approval, ready to face the final battle. Aiyana rallied the Sioux at dawn, her voice ringing as she revealed Slade's theft, holding up the contract scrap. Elders nodded, their doubts fading, and a warrior shouted, "We stand with you!" She sang a sacred song, its notes uniting the camp, and tears fell, hope soaring. A woman proposed a tribal council, and Aiyana agreed, her heart light. Taza's absence stung, and she vowed to free him, her guilt heavy. Young Sioux raised their fists, ready to fight, and Aiyana's chest swelled with pride. A child hugged her leg, and she knelt, whispering, "We'll win," her resolve unbreakable, the tribe's unity her strength. The people's singer met Aiyana in the forest, his cloak tattered, revealing, "I was Carter's puppet once," a Sioux singer broken by his greed. His eyes burned, and he handed her a final cylinder, proof of Carter's crimes. Aiyana's breath caught, gratitude flooding her, and she asked, "Why hide?" He sighed, fear of revenge, and slipped away, leaving her stunned. The cylinder felt heavy, a sacred trust, and she tucked it close, her heart racing. A wolf's howl echoed, and she shivered, the singer's sacrifice urging her on. Aiyana ran to Henry, her hope blazing, ready to end Carter's reign with this final piece. Aiyana, Henry, and Kele planned a stand at the fair, their whispers urgent in the tent. She'd sing the true Sioux song, exposing Slade and Carter to the crowd. Kele volunteered to guard her, his eyes clear, and Aiyana hugged him, hope flickering. Henry contacted the journalist, ensuring coverage, his hands steady, despite fear. Aiyana prepared her ceremonial dress, its beads gleaming, her heart pounding with purpose. The tribe agreed to join, bringing Sioux banners, and she smiled, their support a fire in her soul. A sheriff's patrol passed and they froze, but it moved on, leaving Aiyana resolute, ready to reclaim her people's voice. Aiyana stepped onto the fair's stage, her voice soaring with the sacred Sioux song, silencing the crowd. She stopped, shouting, "Slade and Carter steal our songs," her words a thunderclap. The tribe raised banners, their presence fierce, and the crowd murmured, stunned. Slade stormed forward, yelling, "Lies!" But Aiyana stood firm, her heart racing. The journalist scribbled frantically, capturing every word, and hope surged in her chest. A white man jeered, but a Sioux elder's glare silenced him, and Aiyana's pride swelled. She sang again, the notes defiant, her ancestors' strength flowing through her, ready to shatter Slade's empire. The people's singer appeared, leading native singers onto the stage, their voices raw as they told of Carter's abuse. A Cheyenne woman showed scars from beatings, and the crowd gasped, their faces softening. Aiyana's heart pounded, the truth cutting through lies, and she held up the cylinder, shouting, "This is our proof." Slade tried to flee, but warriors blocked him, their eyes fierce. The journalist snapped photos, his flash blinding, and Aiyana's hopes soared, victory near. A Sioux elder nodded, his approval warming her, and she stood tall, the singer's courage fueling her. The crowd's silence turned to whispers, and Aiyana knew the tide had turned. Reese charged the stage, his gun glinting as he aimed at Aiyana, his snarl chilling her blood. Kele leaped forward, shoving her aside, and the shot rang out, striking his chest. Aiyana screamed, catching him as he fell, his blood soaking her hands. "Protect the song," Kele whispered, his eyes fading, and her heart shattered, sobs racking her. Warriors tackled Reese, pinning him, and the crowd screamed, chaos erupting. Aiyana held Kele, begging, "Stay with me," but his breath stopped, leaving her empty. She kissed his forehead, her grief a storm, vowing to honor his sacrifice with victory. Federal agents stormed the fair, their badges flashing as they cuffed Slade, his curses echoing. Barlow tried to run, but agents grabbed him, his face pale with fear. Carter's name rang out, linked to the evidence, and Aiyana handed over the cylinder, her hands steady despite her grief. The journalist's camera clicked, capturing Slade's defeat, and Aiyana's heart lifted, justice near. Warriors cheered, their voices a roar, and she stood tall, Kele's loss a heavy weight. A Sioux woman hugged her, whispering, "You did it." And Aiyana nodded, tears falling. She looked at Kele's body, her resolve iron, ready to carry his dream forward. Aiyana stood by Kele's grave, her voice soft as she sang a Sioux song, its notes carrying her love and grief. The tribe gathered, their faces proud, honoring her as a guardian of their heritage. Slade, Barlow, and Carter faced prison, their empire crushed, and Aiyana's heart eased, justice won. Henry held her hand, his love a quiet strength, and they planned a sanctuary for Sioux culture. The cylinder songs were safe, never to be stolen again, and she felt her ancestors' approval. A child laid flowers on Kele's grave, and Aiyana smiled through tears, his sacrifice her guiding light. She vowed to sing forever, her voice a beacon for her people's soul.